Hello. So this is one of my Back to the Future type of recording. Uh, I had talked to you about COVID and its treatment when COVID was rampant, and apparently it is still doing the damage, having more cases and certainly increased deaths. But there was a news that we're going to have a COVID vaccine available soon, and there are a lot of questions and some answers available. Several companies are in running to produce the COVID vaccine for various reasons, and I just thought that I will give you a mini sermon to understand how the vaccination works. I will not go into the specific vaccines that are produced by different companies because that will be more medical than general knowledge. So the vaccine is where you produced antibodies to a particular bacteria or virus, and that will protect you from infection spreading. I often give an example that if I see somebody only one time and not see him again for 6 months, it is less likely that I may recognize him. But if I'm seeing somebody every day or every week, next time when I see him, my memory is jogged and I know right away that this was that particular person. And my response would be there, good, bad, or otherwise. So the memory gets more firmer when I have been exposed more frequently. The same thing happens with a bacteria or a virus. If I've been exposed to a virus or a bacteria in the past, my body remembers it. Now, body is not the brain, but the cells that are the defending cells for the soldiers and antibodies which are produced by them will be spiking to fight the infection. So essentially that's the vaccine, where we give you the agent that causes the disease and our body will produce antibodies. This antibody will protect us from getting the disease again. Over a period of time, the antibody production drops down and the immunity goes down, and you may need a booster again. You've seen that with tetanus, you've seen that with various others, including usual vaccines that we do, including seasonal flu. So various ways to produce these antibodies or the immunity have been used. The oldest variety was where we have a virus which is cultivated into the cells and then it is inactivated and then injected. So the inactivated virus does not cause the disease, but body still recognizes it and produces antibody. And once the antibodies are produced, they will last for X number of days and they will protect us from disease. This is the simplest and the oldest way probably of producing antibodies. So the vaccine is produced by injecting you with a virus which is inactivated. So it is incapable of causing disease because it is totally inactivated. The second variety of vaccine would be where we use a live virus. The virus that is live, and if we inject it without any alteration in it, then it can cause disease before it produces antibody. But in this case, we will be producing attenuated. That means the virus is altered in such a way that it cannot cause the disease. It is weakened. And this weakened virus is injected so that the body recognizes it again and then produces antibodies, and they will be protecting us from getting the disease when the virus, which is not attenuated, enters our body. So this is the second variety. Again, this has been a very common way of producing antibodies against viruses. There are few newer ways, and to understand this, I'll probably give you an example, which will be like there are proteins and there are different areas of the viruses which produces recognition. There is something called spike protein. Viruses also have common areas And even though, for example, adenovirus, which is a virus of the common cold, uh, they have been using that and changing it in such a way that you would produce an antibody against adenovirus, which is also coronavirus. So this is a different technique of using known virus and changing it. But then we also have the protein. So instead of taking the entire virus and either doing attenuated or inactivated, the first two that I told you about, we can use the part of the protein, some people call it spike protein, to be injected such that the body reacts to that protein. So there is no virus, so there is no DNA or RNA of the virus, so that we don't have to worry about getting any disease. But this particular way of injecting a spike protein would cause the antibody formation and again give us the protection. So this is probably the third way of doing the vaccination. Some of the vaccines which we're going to be used will probably have that. There is a still further, which are a little bit newer ways of doing the vaccination, is in a DNA and an RNA. And this is a little bit difficult to understand because we talk about DNA for recognizing people and for paternity and genetic defects and all sorts of stuff. But you have to realize that mRNA, M as in Mary, RNA, is a messenger RNA. It stimulates certain parts in the cells, or it gives you a message in the certain part in the cell to produce certain proteins. So the messenger RNA vaccines will be incorporated in the cell, and that will stimulate the cell to form the antibodies. The DNA does similar thing, but DNA stimulates something to form an RNA, and that way it is done indirectly. But these are called DNA or RNA vaccines, or specifically the one that is in development is called mRNA vaccine. So here we are not injecting the virus, dead or alive or attenuated, but we're not even injecting a full protein, which is spike protein vaccines, but we are just injecting a DNA or mRNA that will stimulate the cell to produce the antibodies. The effectiveness of these is going to be measured and should be adequate. As anyone can imagine, think about older person not remembering things quickly. Older the person, sometimes the immunological or the antibody response is not adequate, and they may need more or repeated vaccination. Many of these vaccines that are going to be given will be given in 2 shots, 21 days apart, and that will boost the effect of the first one. If you remember what I said in the beginning, if you see somebody once and you see him again, your memory would be jogged better, and third time you will remember it much more than if you have seen him only once. So many of the vaccines will have 2 shots, some will have 1 shot, but they will be 21 days apart. So as the first will start the immunity response, the second will sustain it or peak it, and that way it will last longer. As I said, older people do not respond to vaccines. We have known that even with the flu shots. Most of these vaccines that are coming out will be intramuscular shots. Intranasals, which are attenuated virus in the flu, you know that, are difficult and can cause problems, so they're not going to be there right now. But certainly would be available. There are a number of companies which are trying to compete with each other, and I'm sure that we will have a successful and effective and a safe vaccine available soon. Thank you for listening. If you like it, please subscribe. Have a nice day and a great weekend.